Hi, I'm Rick Lobdell, owner of Concrete Mystique, writing another article. This article is about how to use a brush. The simplest form of work that we can do is using a brush on all of our jobs. It will speed up everything we do. You'd be surprised how fast you can work by just using a simple little brush and getting all your borders done. I've seen so many companies mask every little detail off just to spray their borders. And by the time they get all that work done, masking all that off for 5 minutes of spraying, they could have been done hours before just by using a simple little brush. So I'm going to show you some of the techniques I use, how efficient I am, how fast I am at it. Of course, I do this all the time, so I'm pretty fast, but again, like everything else I say, practice makes perfect. So first off, how to hold the brush. Hold it almost like you're using a pencil or a pen, very much like this. See how my hand is holding on to it? My little finger isn't even really touching it very often. Sometimes it does. You don't hold it like this. I've seen people try to, it's like they're putting peanut butter on bread or something, and I don't understand why they want to hold it that way, but it doesn't hold at all. You actually want to hold it just like this, just like you would like a pen or a pencil. The second most important thing is how to dip your brush. Seems so simple, but it's not. So first and foremost, when you dip in, you don't want to dip to this metal right here. You want to be very careful to get it inside this metal. Now we're using acid stain on this video, and I'm going to show you how acid stain kind of reacts as you go kind of thing, and it's part of how you brush. But when you dip, you don't want that acid stain on this metal if you can keep it from it. So don't drop your brush in. That's one of the biggest things I see all the time with my new employees as they start. They always just drop the brush in. You don't drop the brush in. You really don't even want much more than this area right here inside the cup, inside the material. So I dip just about that much and kind of see how much is in there. When you first dip, it doesn't really absorb into the bristles. You kind of have to wear the bristles down a little bit to let it absorb. It's almost like they have a skin on them, or like kind of a seal to them or something. But as you use it, it'll start to break down and loosen up and soak in the stain better. So that first initial one is just always just dipping right there, just that little tiny bit. Now, the next thing is making sure you don't drip. See how it's dripping? You can see I'm dripping away. One of the things I've learned is, because you don't want to take it from here and drag it over, because you'll drip all over the place. You don't ever want to drip when you use acid stain. It's one of the biggest things, is don't ever drip. So, my easiest way to do this is simply just to go 1, 2. I didn't touch it into the water, just 1, 2. And look, no drip. No drip at all. I can sit here for a while. I can travel all the way across a room with it and not drip at all half the time. And it's just as simple as 1, 2, no drip. Now, when I start to brush, let me show you how I brush everything. By the way, I'm using Surf Coat's Heritage Black Acid Stain, or it's called Coal Acid Stain, but it's a black version of an acid stain. Put this back here so we can see it. Now, when you start, you got to have a starting point. I'm going to do this border around this thing right here. And when you start, you got to start on one of your corners, but you don't want to put a straight line through the corner. You want to make sure you kind of meander a little bit and make sure that you kind of make the same modeling that the brush is going to make, or the acid stain is going to make, I mean. Another thing to do too is you kind of want to make sure you try to keep your bucket on the border as much as you can, just for one extra reason, for dripping, spilling. You know, you want to be safe at all times. Safe as in wearing gloves too. Acid stain won't hurt you, but I can promise you it doesn't taste very good if you lick it by accident. I have done that. So, drip, no drip, start brushing. My whole arm is brushing. I'm not just using my wrist. When you first start off, like you can see here, you don't get a lot of stain on it. See how I meandered my edge, and then I start working my way down the border. You kind of want to start in the middle and kind of visualize how far you can go per dip. You don't want to go down the edges. You don't want to start going like this, because the thing about acid stain is it's a permanent reaction. So if I do this and I let it sit there, it will stay. It will show up just like that. If I don't hurry and cover the middle, you will see the reaction differently right there. You don't have a lot of time with acid. It reacts quick. So you got to kind of keep evenly painting as you're going. Sometimes you even go backward a little bit just to cover some area. Dip, move, see, look, I'm not dripping at all. Now, I start in the middle, and I work my way out to the edges, and I go about 5 inches at a time. That's usually about how far a normal dip can go. You don't want to get it too dry. You want to kind of keep a wet edge as much as you can. So you're kind of like just pushing along the wetness as you go. Another important thing too is to be very careful of your edges. See how clean my edge is? I'm not missing anything. I see a lot of times new guys start and they kind of go like this and they're missing the edge. And it almost looks a little sloppy. And then you come back the next day if you don't notice it, and that edge right there will show up. And when you go to try to restain it, you'll see the restain and it stands out. So you want to get clean to the edge at all times and be very careful about that and finish up your edges. Don't leave them. All right, now I'm going to go at my normal pace because I've talked enough and I need to get moving to the next step. Like I said, a lot of this just takes practice. I've been doing this for years, so I can move pretty fast with the brush. But what it does is it keeps the edges wet for me at all times. I don't want to take my time and take forever and let it get dry on the edge. It's very important to keep a wet edge with acid stain so that the stain models itself and you're not modeling your brush strokes as best you can. Some of them will show up. Sometimes I go back and do it twice. The second time we'll get rid of a lot of strokes. But it just depends on the job, depends on the design, depends what I'm trying to pull off. I know I'm going farther than the 5 inches like I told you, but that's because I'm pushing it along and dipping a little bit more to speed up the process. Come back up where you catch up, and hopefully it'll look just like the modeling when it's all said and done that the acid stain likes to do anyway. I'm doing this on top of an overlay. All the different surfaces react differently, from a smooth surface to a broom finish to an overlay. You never really know what to expect. It's all about the porosity of it, the texture of it, and it always reacts different, so be prepared. All right, now I'm going to try to hand brush the middle just to show you how I can do big areas. Let me pour some of this back in here because I don't need this much material. Let's see what we're at here. I just used full strength acid stain. Now I'm going to do 1 part acid stain to 5 parts water, or 1 to 5. So when I do 1 to 5, I got to add the water to it. 1, 2, 4, 5. Now I have a lot of material in my cup, and you got to be careful of having a lot of material in your cup. Sometimes you want to dump some of it out because that much material will cause drips easier and cause messes because if you'll splash it. So you want to be careful not to splash. Now let's see how fast I can do this. When you brush bigger areas like this, you want to kind of start in the middle and work your way out, but you kind of have to keep a wet edge. Actually, I'm going to start in this corner and move my way down. So as I go, I'm keeping a very wet edge as fast as I can. You have to move fast. You can't do it slow. You can't take your time. You have to go as fast as you can, of course, without making a mess, which is always the fun part. A lot of times I sit here and kind of let my brush soak in some of it, kind of get it started, because it doesn't soak in right in the beginning like I told you with the last brush, and you can kind of see it's a different color. So let's see how this goes. I don't normally brush big areas. A lot of times I'll spray them. It just depends on the design and the look that I'm going for. And a lot of times I end up just pushing the stain is what I'm doing. I'm letting it do its own thing. hard to talk and stain fast at the same time. Do a test for me. See if I can do a video while I'm working at the same time. See how I just push that stain back with me? Probably hard to see in the light. If you work fast enough, most of the time the reaction is whatever the stain wants to do and not what you've left as a mark from your brush. See how I'm using my whole arm? It's not just my hand or my wrist. My whole arm is moving as I go. And that is how I acid stain. Thank you for watching my video. This is Rick Lobdell with Concrete Mystique, and reminding you the brush is the most important thing you can use on a job site. Cheapest, easiest, most efficient thing you can use on a job site. Don't forget how to hold the brush, just like a pencil or pen. When you dip, don't dip up to the metal. When you dip, don't drip, so drop it twice, raise it up, stop the drips. When you brush, use your whole arm as you're going. Pay attention to the different textures that you have to work with, from broom finish to smooth finish to overlays. They all react differently, they all move differently, and you have to get used to each one of them and learn how far you can brush per dip. Don't try to go too far, too fast, or too slow, I mean. You want to make sure you keep a wet edge. And most importantly, make sure you get your edges as you brush. Don't miss the edges. Thank you, and have a great day.